Thanks for tuning in once again to more college football talk on the Our Football Network as we handicap Week 6 in college football with Marc Lawrence at PlaybookSports.com. Mark, how's it going?
I'm doing just terrific, Greg. I hope everything's going well for you, just the same.
Yes, it's we're recording this in the morning, early in the morning, so this might be our new our new schedule. Which,
our new post time, huh?
What's that?
Our new post time, huh?
Yes, our new post time. We'll move our horse racing post time to the afternoon, but I think this makes a lot more sense during the football season for us. I lost about an hour of sleep watching the game last night, the NFL game. That was pretty exciting, and then they screwed up. Well, it's like you get the whole buildup of the last drive, and then the player slips. It's like, oh, come on, that's it? We got robbed. So that was kind of boring. But anyway, this is college football, and what I did want to talk about, since I was bringing up the NFL, I do the NFL handicapping show with Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post, and Ryan is just he's not a handicapper. He does it, he does picks like a lot of writers do it with the newspapers, but that's about it, And I talked him into doing picks with us, just again for fun, just so when I give my picks, I figured, why don't you just give yours and we'll kind of talk about it. Instead of recapping games this year, we would preview games this year. So I was explaining to him that, and I would guess, because remember we have talked about how we've had a really good start to the season, and I did not have a good week last week overall. And a lot of it was because of the trends didn't go my way. And I'm just guessing that maybe you guys had, if I don't know how good or bad your week was, but I would guess it was probably statistically lower than any of the others, because there were a lot of trends that just did not go the way of the trends. And that happens. And I explained that to Ryan. And I think it's always important to explain it to listeners, is that that's okay. Don't be discouraged by it. That's why they're trends. They're not called perfection. They mean is that more often than not. And then what happens is once every 4 or 5 weeks, you're going to get a situation where all of the trends just go the opposite way. It just happens. It happens. And again, based on what you pick, because again, you've got all the games. So I'm only picking out of the NFL, say, maybe 75% of them or 65%. So anyway, this is my record last week. I went 1-10. Okay.
Okay.
Ooh. The only win was my 5-star. And I also went 1-for-1 on my upset special. Because of that, based on my formula, that's the thing that I always show people, is my formula. So people understand what I mean by that, is I break it down based on how much money I spend on each pick, et cetera, et cetera. So people may not even understand what that means until something happens like what happened to me last week. I made money last week in the NFL, $40, because of my formula, because it works for me. And what I do is, the reason I made money on it was because obviously the 5-star was the one I invest the most money on. And the upset special was the Giants. They were almost a 3-1 dog. And I have $100 on my money line each week. So that made $300. So combine the 100 and the 300, that was $400 in the plus column. A lot of the losses I had were my additional picks, which is only $25 each. So even though I had a lot of losses, most of them in my additional picks, I still made money. And so I explained this to Ryan, and he was like, well, that sounds to me like your formula is all screwed up then. I go, well, Ryan, this isn't a game I'm playing. This is for real. This is to try to make money. I go, if we were having a contest, me and you, then yeah, I guess it's screwed up. I'm 1 for 10, and you picked more than me. You should be beating me. But this isn't a contest. This is about making actual money. This is serious stuff. And everybody should have their own formula. And that's why that's my point, is that I'm going to have 2 or 3 of these weeks a year. It's going to happen. I'm going to lose a lot of the games, but hopefully my formula saves me. It's not going to save me every time, I'm going to lose $400 or $500, maybe once or twice a year on a week. But this particular week was the perfect scenario where my formula saved me.
Well, it sounds to me like what happened to your week, Greg, was largely the fact that your two major plays cashed.
Yes.
And your other ones didn't. But because you play them at different denominations, you were fortunate that way.
Yes.
It's not what I do, nor is it recommended. I'm not saying that what you're doing is right or wrong. It did save you last week, and that's terrific. But it's very, very difficult when you look at bankroll playing in football games. You want to play games within percentages. You don't want to ever risk any more than, let's just say 3-star, 4-star, 5-star, any more than 3%, 4%, or 5% on any single game. So if by doing that and staying within that criteria, what it does is it allows you to maximize more when you're winning and minimize less when you're losing. So you're not putting, to use that phrase, all of your eggs in one basket.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
So,
and I agree with that. But again, for me, I've learned over the years that there's a certain situation where, and again, this is why I always tell people too, whenever I'm even pitching your newsletter or talking about anything that you guys do where you pick all the games, is it's hard to pick and choose stuff, because when you pick and choose, you might just wind up picking stuff that, okay, well, that's a loss, or that's a loss, or that's a loss. Hey, you only picked 3 of their games, but they recommended, say, 7. You didn't pick the other 4, and the other 4 won. You picked the 3 that lost. So if you would have picked all 7, you would have won 4, lost 3, you would have made money. So I completely understand, because you guys are professionals. And that's why I always try to tell people too, I am not a professional. I've been doing it a long time, but I also, like I said, I also know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And I'm just true to myself. And the point though is that what I'm really trying to say is don't get discouraged if you have a really bad week when all the trends go against you. It's just going to be one of those weeks, but over the course of a full season, the trends are going to work for you.
Well, the bottom line, the key is stay consistent in what it is that you do. Just stay consistent. Don't jump off the ship and change your style and do things like that throughout the course of the football season. There's another theory that people say all games are equal, all of equal value when you're wagering on football games. And a perfect example is in the Superbook contest in Las Vegas, myself and my partner, we were leading the contest. And last week was a key pivotal week, and we went 1-4. So as we went 1-4 and obviously gave up the lead, we broke stride in that sense. What we did was, in handicapping the games, ultimately you have to put up 5 selections in the contest. Well, in paring down the ticket, we pared it down to 8 games. So it's very, very difficult at that point to get the knife out, make the decisions, and what you're going to end up using. Well, wouldn't you know, the 3 games we did not use all won.
Okay.
All
I hate when that happens.
Yeah, and part of our rationale was we don't want to use bad teams. Well, we left the Jets home, we left the Giants home, but so things like that. So there's a lot of second guessing and woulda, couldas, and shouldas in this stuff. But again, it all comes down to be consistent, be true in what it is that you do, and then believe in what it is that you do, and you'll end up doing well in the end.
Yeah, because again, all you had to do was think, like last week. It's like taking the Rams over Arizona. Well, they had beaten them 6 straight up and against the spread. Well, if they lost. Mike Tomlin. Well, you're always going to take him, right, on the road as a dog. Okay, no, he lost. He didn't cover. And it went down the line where you had all these trends that were like really golden on one side, and they just all went the other way. And again, that's why they're trends. It's not perfection. Sometime, and more often than not, you're going to win. You're going to lose a couple of them a week, and that's it. But sometimes just things are not going to go your way. And the other thing also you don't do is chase the money during a given week. So don't do that. If you have a really bad Saturday, and let's just say things aren't going well early on Sunday, you might as well just stop. Don't throw more money into the 4:00 games on Sunday, or even more money into the Sunday night game, or more money into the Monday night game. Because you can tell if you're having a bad week and things are not going your way, then just stop. Wait until next week, and then you'll hopefully have a better gauge and your luck will be more on your side.
Well, I think that goes perfectly hand in hand with a rationale that I really, really like to use and express. And basically what it comes down to is you didn't earn all of your money from your winnings in one game.
Yeah.
So don't give it up in one game. Don't
Yes.
give it all back in one game. Okay.
Yes.
So you have to keep that balance in between here. So, don't obviously jump off the ship, put everything on one game in a get out fashion because you're going to not get out.
Okay. And that's the reason why a lot of people will wonder, well, why are you doing like 4 or 5 or 6, sometimes 7 upsets, especially in college football? And what I say is I don't necessarily sit there and go, oh yeah, I think all 7 of them are definitely going to win. Those are I love them all. It's that I think that, yeah, I might really like a couple, but the others, I'm just statistically speaking thinking, well, all I got to do is hit 1 of the 3 and I'm breaking even. And if I can hit 2 out of the 3, then I'm making some serious cash. So there's reasons for, especially the money lines in college football, which is why I do so much better in college than the NFL, because it's to me, it's less, it's more predictable, and it's also easier to make money because there's so many upsets in college football and the money lines are so big. So, I mean, I don't know about you, but that's just always been my experience.
My experience is that it doesn't matter to me, or I don't set out to look to have a defined amount of games that I'm going to end up wanting to bet or share with my customers. I let the games come to me. Okay.
Sure.
If there are not 4 or 5 good games, I'm not going to use 4 or 5 games for the sake of using 4 or 5 games. Just let the games come to you, because in the end, you'll end up winning out because you'll end up using games that you feel more comfortable with and you should have used in the long run. And one final thing, we don't want to digress too much here, but you mentioned the trends and everything. I'm a systems and angles player here. I publish a lot of trends, and we talk about these trends a lot on the show. I will say this, that these trends are all basically team-oriented, and systems and angles are league-wide oriented, and I handicap first and almost always foremost out of systems and angles, and I let the trends support the systems and angles. Okay. So that's sort of where I come from here, okay? Because team-oriented trends change as coaches change, yes, personnel players change, and so, yes, forth and whatnot.
Agreed.
But situations do not change in the National Football League.
Yes.
If you're off of back-to-back 40-point losses, doesn't matter whether you're the Philadelphia Eagles or the New York Giants, but all the teams in the league that are off back-to-back 40-point losses, there's an expectancy. And that's exactly kind of the point I'm trying to drive home here. So I use the trends to enhance what it is I'm doing. A trend can become a friend. So use it that way. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because you can look at some of the trends like you're saying and go, well, it doesn't even, if you look at it, well, hey, this team has won 8 out of the last 9 in the series. Well, they haven't played in 10 years.
That's correct.
So, but like you said, that can still be used as, well, I already like the game. I have 4 or 5 reasons I like it. All right, well, that's just another thing that helps.
Then enhances your handicap, yes, is exactly what it does, yes.
Okay, let's get started with a big one. And this is going to be actually my 5-star pick. I was considering as an upset, full-blown, because it's 5-1 on the money line, and that's Auburn. I decided to just go with the 5-star because of the fact that, obviously, I'm getting 16 points, so I feel a lot more comfortable. But also, I love the information that you guys had in the newsletter, that Auburn is 49-11 straight up at home since 2000 with no loss by more than 16 points. Now I love that. That's a long time. They're a 16-point dog basically. That means this would be the first time since before 2000 that they lose by more than 60. That's a great long historical trend that I like. Throw on top of the fact that there's a couple other trends in there that work in their favor. Plus, I just also like the fact that we may still see Bennett at quarterback. That's a distinct possibility. And if Daniels plays, well, he hasn't really been healthy, he hasn't gotten into a rhythm. Auburn has a really good defense. And if Bennett plays, if you look at Bennett when he's played against really good teams last year, he doesn't do all that well. He beats up, throws for all these yards and 5 touchdowns and no picks against crappy teams. But when he steps up in competition against good defensive teams like Alabama, Kentucky, the stats go way down. Auburn's coming off a huge win. Their only loss was against a very good Penn State team on the road, and that was a close game. I don't care about the Georgia State game. Draw a line through it. Doesn't mean anything. If you draw the line through the Georgia State game, you have a very good season for Auburn.
I agree 100% with that rationale. And I'm with you. I love situations like you pointed out about the fact that Auburn, that record at home, with no losses by more than in a situation. To me, that's a terrific situation. I like doing that. I have also applied that to basketball as well. Home court teams on their home court, with coaches, they've not lost games by over a certain amount, and they're taking that amount. So those are really, really good anchors or starting points in football games. In the Georgia Bulldogs here, you've got everybody's got Georgia on their mind these days, okay?
Yep.
Because they're playing really, really good football, but they're becoming very, very popular because of what it is they're doing, and you're getting a lot of value because of what it is they're doing here as well. This is simply a line that's just out of control in my mind. We pointed out in the newsletter that before the season began in Vegas, the line in this football game was Georgia -4. Now you're talking about upwards close to 16 points. What has happened between the beginning of the season and now, other than the fact that Georgia's gone undefeated? Not a whole lot more, other than the fact that Georgia's gone undefeated.
Yeah.
He's ranked number 2, okay? So I think there's a ton of value in this football game, and then like you say, you apply it toward that stat, the fact that Auburn hasn't dropped the home game by more than 16 points. You got to go all the way back to in the 1990s when it happened. So it makes me feel really good about Auburn, and I'm with you on this side in the football game.
And keep it. And look, we all knew Georgia would be undefeated if they beat Clemson. Okay, and does anybody forget that game? How ugly that game was? I mean, that was an ugly. Georgia didn't score an offensive touchdown. Does Clemson look very good right now? So they beat up Arkansas, and what did the quarterback do? He passed for 70 yards in the game? Because Arkansas, we said it last week. These are kids. You couldn't expect. They beat Texas. They beat Texas A&M. Sooner or later, they were going to have a dud. You just can't expect Arkansas to just keep playing at a high level, especially on the road against Georgia. So I just think it was over. I think people looked at that and was like, oh, this team is they're just too good right now.
I agree. Sometimes what goes up comes back down. There's always a return to the mean in handicapping. It's horse racing, it's bouncing. It's football games, the same thing. Winning big against the spread, coming back to the norm. But what we get from that situation is that keyword value, because the public is all over teams like that, or like they're all over horses like that. And it's really, really nice to pick up the value when you can use a team that can take advantage of it. And I believe Auburn can take advantage of that in this Georgia game.
And by the way, if Georgia covers this game and does it convincingly, then watch out, because they're probably going to end up in the national championship game, or at least going to make that Georgia-Alabama game a really good one. And Brian Harsin is a really good football coach, too. Let's keep that in mind at Auburn. So. Okay. The other big game in the SEC, I didn't pick this game, is LSU and Kentucky. First matchup since 2014, so it's one of those matchups. If you want to throw away their series record, you could do that. First time the LSU is a dog this year. So they've got some really good things going for them. All the trends seem to be siding towards LSU in this one. Kentucky hasn't lost a spread, though, this year. And they got Georgia next week. It's a 3-point spread, kind of. I don't really like the way LSU's played, but they're still LSU. Kentucky just beat Florida as a dog. I don't know. It was a tough one for me. I just decided to stay away.
I'm going to be on the LSU side of this football game, and it's, again, all because of what happened with Kentucky last week. They pulled that big upset win over Florida. They were just 2-33 in their previous 35 games against the Gators. You saw at the end of the football game how the field, they just swarmed the field. I call that a goal post game. And those are very, very difficult for players to have to get back up to that intensity level the following week after such an occurrence like that. Ed Ogeron is really, if he doesn't win this football game, he is going to become planted on the hot seat at LSU. They're not happy with what's going on there right now. They're just 2 games above 500. since Joe Burrow led them to a national championship, and that's not good enough at LSU.
No.
So he needs a win like this, this bullet in his holster, if you will, per se. There's a ton of history here. You mentioned it's been a while since they played, but you just don't find LSU dressing up as an underdog in games like this to teams like Kentucky in football games.
That's true.
You know, this is a big step up game for Kentucky after they stepped up last week. I don't think they've got two big steps in them. I'm going to play LSU plus the points.
Okay, in the Big Ten, a couple of big games. That Saturday night game is actually going to be one of my 4-star picks, and that's Michigan against Nebraska. Look, I have been impressed by Nebraska's defense this year, and I know Adrian Martinez and the offense is picking things up. I don't look at it as something that I think a defense like Michigan should be afraid of, though. But it's the defense of Nebraska that is the problem. It's a huge opportunity for Scott Frost, and I already think he's done a great job this year. I don't care. Who cares what happened in the first game of the season? It was a bad loss. Things didn't look good at that time. But they played well against Oklahoma. They haven't lost since. But for me, this is about just Michigan. To me, I just believe they're different. I think this is a different year. I've said it before. I think the coaching changes that he's made, the attitude with the program is completely different. The style of the way they're playing is completely different, and everything is working. And to beat Wisconsin the way they did was just phenomenal. And I just think they're a better team than Nebraska. And Michigan is not. I don't think they're a 2-3 loss type of team. If they lose this game, they will be. So I think they're better than that. And the fact that they're only given 3 just shows you that they have lost a lot of the glamour that they've had over the years. Nobody believes in them anymore. If this was 4 or 5 years ago, they'd be like a 10-point favorite, but nobody still believes. Even though they just beat up Wisconsin, they'll lose. Harbaugh, they'll find a way to blow it. I just don't think that's this year's team, so that's why I'm going to gamble that it's not. I'm going to gamble that this is a different team, and that's why I like Michigan, and I'm going to give the 3.
You've got a matchup here of two teams that are improved this football season. As you mentioned, this is Nebraska's best effort that they've had since Scott Frost has been on and with the program. Michigan's back on the right track here again, so this is a nice collision of two teams that are each going in the right direction in this football game. I look inside this game, though, and what jumps out to me the most, first of all, I have not been on Michigan all season long. The merry-go-round's going 90 miles an hour now, and I'm certainly not going to try and jump on, okay? Yeah. But what I see here out of the Playbook newsletter this week is our featured Smart Box. And our featured Smart Box is what we call 5-0 Fat Cats. And in a nutshell, basically what you're doing is you're playing against teams that are 5-0 in Game 6 when they find themselves favored. And we do this because those teams have really, really struggled against the spread, doing just that. They like the clippings. They like what they're reading. They become fat cats. They have difficult times. You take them out on the road as favorites, they're even worse. That's the role for Michigan in this particular game. So I'm going to put the Smart Box to work here with Scott Frost and his terrific record, 6-0 to the spread, perfect when he's been a dog, and he's coming off a straight-up and point spread win. So I'm going to put that all together and take Nebraska plus the points here.
Okay, next up in the Big Ten, the game, again, I'm not touching, is Penn State and Iowa. This should be a real good one. Iowa is, they were a 3-point favorite. They're down to 1.5 now, and we'll see if that even continues to dip, because I know that's going to be important regarding some of the stats that you're going to throw into this series. The favorite, by the way, in this series has won 5 straight. So Iowa right now is the favorite. They won last year for the first time in the last 7 games, Iowa did. So Penn State had controlled the series. The other thing is Franklin is just 3-13 straight up and against the spread when he's on the road versus opponents with a winning percentage opponents on the road with a winning percentage of 6.66 or higher. So that scared me a little bit. I think these are two very good football teams. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy and watch it.
I think it's the best game on the card this particular weekend for all the obvious reasons. But what a perfect segue you handed to me on this game here, Greg. We just talked about those 5-0 Fat Cats, of which both teams are 5-0 coming into this game.
Yeah.
Okay, the rule here is you play against the 5-0 favorites. You play on the 5-0 dogs who become disrespected and are Rodney Dangerfield-like. What we've got here is a collision of the two. A 5-0 dog taking on a 5-0 favorite in a football game. I like the revenge aspect in this contest when Penn State got beat 20 points at Happy Valley last year. I think this Penn State, they're both rolling here. There's no question. They're both on a really, really good win streaks coming into this game. Iowa's won 11 in a row since the end of last season, and Penn State's doing the same thing. They're on a 9-game win streak since they opened up the season so poorly last year. So everything, there's a lot of cancel outs here in this football game, but I'm going to ride that Fat Cat, fade the favorite, play the dog. I'll be on Penn State in this game.
Any chance that those odds continue to drop?
Well, they're coming down here a little bit because of that, because of the situation I mentioned here, and the Fat Cat theory is kind of out there right now, and people are becoming attuned to it. So those games are getting bet early on in games like this. So, but I don't see it going much lower because Iowa's done anything wrong this year here. There's nothing,
and they're at home. Yeah,
that's exactly right. There's no reason to be fading Iowa here to make a big move against them for anything they've done. Okay. Maybe more a move of what Penn State is doing, okay, may move that needle a little bit in a game like this. But I think this game's going to kind of kick off right around where it is, just Iowa, a 2.5 point favorite.
And it could be a Big Ten championship rematch.
It could well be just that. So this is really, really, like I say, I think the top game in the college card Saturday.
The other game in the Big Ten one of the top games I'm taking is actually going to be one of the upsets, and I'm going to gamble on Illinois. I'm going to go with the Brett Bielema facing his old team kind of deal. And also, Illinois has covered both games as a home dog this year. But I'm taking the outright upset because Wisconsin is just in all sorts of bad right now. Offensively, it's just a mess. Now, the good thing is that Mertz will probably have a good game because he has good games versus bad teams. It's the good ranked teams that he struggles against. So that's the negative that I have in this spot, taking Illinois. Keep in mind, Illinois at home in 2019, the last time they played Wisconsin at home, they were a 29-point home dog and upset the Badgers in that one. So I'm just going to gamble that they'll be fired up to win for the coach. And then you got Wisconsin just feeling like the season's already lost. What do we have to play for except the bowl? And we'll see whether or not this has any impact on the head coach there, because some people aren't really confident that Christ is the right guy.
Well, he's a local product, okay, and they wrap their arms around him because he is, but he's not really delivering the goods. And he's putting himself more and more in the hot seat with each performance thus far this football season here. The problem for this football team is they've been really pushed around in the fourth quarter of their games. They've been outscored 44 points in the fourth quarter of their football games. He's going to have to refortify that some way, somehow. To me, I am not a big Brett Bielema fan. I know he had some success at Wisconsin, but I don't like the fact that he bailed out and ran for the money at Arkansas. Now he's suddenly back in the Big Ten Conference here. And I think Iowa, or I should say, on the flip side of that, I think Wisconsin will take advantage of that. They know that this coach bailed on them earlier before, and I think they're going to want to really come hard at him. Wisconsin needs this game like blood, and I believe they'll get it.
Okay, now we got the, I don't know what they're calling it now, but I could still call it the Red River Shootout. That is Oklahoma and Texas. And this is usually a good football game. This is Oklahoma's a 3-point favorite, and this is going to be one of my 4-star picks because I just really like this Texas team this year. They've had one blemish, and that was the Arkansas team that was just waiting for them, and they got them. But I tell you what, I'm not the biggest Steve Sarkisian guy, but I have been so far impressed with what he's done, and this is one of those games that can kind of define his season for sure. So I'm going to ride that. I just think that Oklahoma is struggling too much. If you throw out the FCS game, Rattler has a 5-4 touchdown to interception ratio. That's just, what is that? So all of a sudden, Oklahoma's become a defensive team. They're 0-4 against the spread this year. Texas is 4-1 against the spread this year. Keep in mind, too, the last 7 in the series has been decided by 8 points or less, so expect another close game. But I just think that Texas has a little bit more firepower on offense, and I just think Oklahoma has barely hung on, not even against the toughest competition. And I think maybe finally that they're going to get caught in this matchup.
I'm going to allude in this game to the Auburn-Georgia game, where at the beginning of the season here, Oklahoma in this football game was a 14-point favorite. Okay, what have they done since the beginning of the season, Greg? All they've done is win every game they played. They're ranked.
They have won every game, yes.
Number 3 in the country. Okay, no, they're not cashing tickets, and that's what people base their plays about, is whether or not this team is good enough to cover the spread. I'm going to kind of throw a little wrench into that and take a look at what Oklahoma does in games after losing 3 consecutive point spread times in a row their last 3 football games. Unbelievable. 21-0 straight up with only 3 point spread losses when they're riding a 3-game point spread losing scheme. A perfect 13-0 straight up into the number when they're taking on a winning opponent. Then you've got Lincoln Riley, who's been terrific himself in games coming off a point spread loss. He's 23-3 straight up in his career. This is just way, way too much value for me to turn away from in this football game. I know Texas has improved under Steve Sarkisian, but this much, I think this is a stretch here. In this, I keep using these horse racing analogies, but when you've got a horse that won a race, and he won the race at 40-1 odds, and now he's favored in his next race in the same condition, that's a reaction to the last result, and I think there's a reaction to what Sarkisian's doing this year and what Oklahoma hasn't done this year. So with that, I think there's value to Oklahoma, and I'll be on the Sooners in the football game.
Okay, now in the Pac-12, there's a game tonight that is a top game for me as far as an upset, and that is Stanford against Arizona State. I really don't understand why the line went from 10 to 13. When that happened, I was like, what, quarterback go out for Stanford? What happened? I don't know. But for some reason, Arizona, everybody put money on Arizona when the line came out, showing no respect to Stanford, especially considering the big weeknight trend that works against the Sun Devils. They have dropped 10 straight covers at home on weeknight games. That's weird. But it is what it is. It's a weeknight game. They're at home. It's a party town. And so maybe that has something to do with it. They're at home. They're partying. Everybody's, maybe they're not too focused on the game when they should be. And Stanford's a weird team to figure out. They're only 1-4 in the stats so far this year. They lost to UCLA. When I picked them in that one, I was like, come on, you lost to UCLA. And then they came back and they beat Oregon. So it's like they're a hard team to figure out, but I really like their quarterback. And I like the quarterback advantage. I know Daniels is an exciting athlete. And Arizona State also has a pretty good defense. But I think Stanford has the better quarterback. And I also think they're still a very well-coached team. And I'm just going to risk. And I still think taking the 13 is a very smart choice. But I'm going to risk it and go with the outright upset over the Sun Devils.
Well, like you say, Stanford's an up-and-down football team, and they've been up a lot more this year than they have in years past. And the comment that David Shaw made after the football game is basically saying he apologizes to his parents and everybody over 70 for the ups and downs it was hard on him and his football team. Well, to that I say, thank you, David Shaw, because I'm over 70, and I'll accept those those apologies.
Especially the way that they came back and won that game last week.
Exactly right. This football team has, I think, turned the corner, if you will. Now, Arizona State, one of the reasons this game gets good here is the fact that Arizona State has suddenly emerged as this really, really good monster-like team in the Pac-12 conference. And everybody bought in last week. They were up by 1 point at the half, and they outscored 18-0 in the second half of their football game last week against UCLA and won the game impressively. So you're going to end up paying a price for doing something like that, and we're seeing it on the point spread and the odds in this game here. But I'm with you. I think Stanford is a real live dog in a football game like this. I'm going to play them plus the points on the farm.
And by the way, also considering that Arizona State was the play last week. So the matchup against UCLA, if you looked at your newsletter, said definitely take Arizona State. And so that's you have to look at those situations as well. And if there's a reason for it, then don't get caught up in the fact that they did cover and wind up, impressively beat UCLA because they were supposed to, based on the information you had. Okay. A couple of the quick games in the Pac-12, short numbers, but look, Oregon State did it again last week. So I'm just I got two big ones back to back, upset USC, 5-star last week. So I'm going to put them in as a 3-star this way. I'm just going to keep riding them. I'm a little bit concerned with the fact that they may come again. They're a team that now is on the road as a favorite. They haven't been in this spot very often. That concerns me. It's the first time they've been a road favorite since 2014. So that concerns me, but they're a better team than Washington State, and Washington State is 0-7 in their last 7, the last 2 years versus winning teams. So I'm just going to keep riding Oregon State in that one.
Well, I can't disagree with you because if you've been on that ride with them, there's no sense in jumping off. There's no reason to jump off. The reason I'm a little bit skeptical here is with all their success, you pay a price. And you're paying a price with the point spread in this particular football game. We saw it last week when there was a lot of late money that came to Oregon State, and they actually went from the dog to the favorite in the football game last week and got the job done. Because they got the job done, they're going to continue to keep adding on to their favoritism here, which we're seeing this week. And I'm a little bit concerned that the last 7 times that they've gone up against winning teams, they have not won any of those football games. So you're asking this team to really take a step up here, and I don't know if this is the opportune time to do it. I'm not a huge Washington State fan at all, and I really am not a Nick Rolovich fan at all. I don't really dig what he's doing as far as the vaccination scene is concerned, but I think all the talent in this football game does lie with the Beavers in the contest, and I'd be surprised if they don't win the game. I just don't know if I'm going to put money on the window on the Beavers in this contest or not.
Yeah, if I hadn't hit them the last 2 weeks, I would not be putting him in as a 3-star myself.
There you go.
Utah USC is the other game, and this is one of my 4-star picks. The whole situation there, they had another death on the team after their win against Washington State a couple of weeks ago. They were partying the next night, and there was a shooting, and one of the teammates passed away. So they've had enough time to kind of deal with it, and you would also think that maybe it could be, it's not why I'm picking it, but it could be something that they'll try to rally around. But I just think that a couple of things I like Utah in this spot. First of all, it's Kyle Whittingham against who? I don't even know who the head coach is. Some assistant coach. Come on, Kyle Whittingham could run circles around whoever's coaching that USC team. Utah is 7-1 against the spread their last 8 as a road dog. First time they're a dog this year. USC 8-13 against the spread their last 21 as a home favorite. But I really like the quarterback, Cameron Rising, the former 4-star quarterback from Texas. He's been playing really well since he's been inserted into the lineup. Brewer, the starter, quit, by the way. So good. Let him quit. Rising, I think, is better at this point. So I'm going to ride Utah as a 3-point dog here to win the game outright.
I'm with you on this football game all the way in the contest here. Huge coaching mismatch with Whittingham against the interim coach. That starts, the checklist when checking boxes in this football game. I also like the fact that Cam Rising is available to step in here for the Charlie Brewer situation, and he can right the ugliness which the program is belabored with over that situation here. They didn't expect Brewer to be doing just that, to be picking up his marbles and going home after being pulled out of a football game. That's absolutely ridiculous. Too much ego involved in situations and cases like that. And then you've got Utah as a terrific underdog. They've been absolutely terrific under Whittingham. When his teams are 500 or less, he's 8-0 to the spread, taking 3 or more points here. I see, I would say, Creedence Clearwater Revival said there's a bad moon rising. There's a bad moon rising for Southern Cal because Cam Rising is going to lead Utah to a victory in this game.
All right, I like it.
There you go.
The final 3-star pick out of my top picks is going to be UTSA, Texas San Antonio, getting 4 against Western Kentucky. I initially, when I saw this line, I was like, what? Western Kentucky's almost a 4-point favorite against? Why? UTSA is a better team. I think it's probably because Western Kentucky has been seen the last few weeks against these FBS teams, and they've when you look at the scores, it looks like they're hanging in there. But I still think Texas San Antonio is just a better team. And if you look at it, they're 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 as dogs of 9 or less, including 2-0 this year. They're 5-0 straight up, 3-1 against the spread on the year. And like I said, I just think they're a better team. I'm surprised that they haven't gotten any respect. Maybe this is the final game that they have to show everybody how good they are.
I'm with you on this game here as well, Greg. I'm a little bit surprised that UTSA is the dog in this contest here. This Western Kentucky offense is really good, and that's part of the reason here. They're expecting a lot of points in the game. But I'm taking a look at UTSA and what they bring to the table here. First of all, they're one of the most deeply experienced teams in all the college football scene this year, and they're playing just that way this year as well. I think personally the wrong team is favored here, and they are another Rodney Dangerfield, fat cat dog getting no respect in a football game like this. They're 5-0. They're the dog in this football contest here. And they've been really good as an underdog of late, 12-3 to the spread the last 15 times taking points. I'm running with the Roadrunners in this game as well.
And then quickly, a couple of single-digit upsets I have, Boise State and Arkansas. I don't think this is a very good Boise State team. Like, we've seen a lot better Boise State teams, but this is still a good, solid Boise State football team. And BYU is also good. But I just think maybe this is the spot where BYU goes down.
BYU is also, Greg, a 5-0 fat cat this particular week, okay? So you're going to add that to the mix here about fading teams like that are favorites. And you couldn't ask a better situation of Boise State to coming off that straight-up upset favorite loss last week with the revenge chip on their shoulder. Yep. I'm with you all the way. I think this is a good, solid handicap to Boise State.
And what do you think about the Arkansas game?
The Razorbacks, I'm a little bit concerned about them, just from the standpoint that we mentioned this last week. They got all this notoriety when they, when they started knocking off ranked football teams. And, all of a sudden, you're not flying under the radar anymore. You become the hunted rather than the hunter in games like this. So this could be a turnaround time for Sam Pittman to get this football team back on track. I'm going to use this as a gauge to find out exactly where they are. But they came out of nowhere, and they played really, really good. Sort of like that claiming horse that all of a sudden has won 5 or 6 races in a row, and now he's stepping up in class. In fact, he's running in a stakes race these days, so I'm going to step back and just watch Arkansas this week. Okay,
and then the final one is going to be East Carolina against Central Florida. And I just think that, first of all, a couple of key injury situations in this game with East Carolina, and that is the fact that, for Central Florida, first of all, Gabriel's out, the quarterback. Their running back, their top running back, Bowser's out. So they're a very, high scoring. They're a high scoring team, but no Gabriel, no Bowser. They lost their game to Navy. That should already give you a situation right there where they're not going so well. They're 2-7 against the spread. Their last 9 as a home favorite, 0-1 this year. East Carolina, meanwhile, has won 3 straight this year, covering 2 of those last 3 against FBS teams. Their losses were against Appalachian State and South Carolina, and they were competitive losses. So, and they're also 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 versus a conference opponent with a winning record. So, I just think this is a good opportunity for East Carolina to pull off the upset as a 3-1 money line play.
Well, I could be attracted to a 3-1 money line play almost any time when you've got reasons to do just that, and you do in this case with Central Florida being really beat up with injuries in a situation like this. My only red flag here about East Carolina is the fact that while they've won some football games, they've been pushed around in the stats in their games. Check it out in the midweek alert, and I think you'll see just that. That keeps me completely out of the game, but I understand where you're going with a big money line dog like the Pirates.
Mark, I appreciate it as well. I know you and I, of course, will have double duty in a few hours with John Hardoon going over the ponies at Keeneland. So looking forward to doing that. Meanwhile, what's the latest? Because baseball is in the playoffs and basketball, and that's the season starting soon. I can't wait for the college basketball season to start.
Yeah, it's all coming together here. October is a great month if you like sports and wagering on sports with all the sports going on. The National Hockey League even opens up as well. So you're like,
ESPN.
there you go, back on ESPN. I love that. So you're like a kid in a candy store right now, with all these sports going on here. But I'm staying focused right now on what's working, and that's college and pro football for us. We've got a big October Rama special package that's offered on the site at playbooksports.com, and if anybody wants to sign up for it, we also toss in the Major League Baseball playoffs as an added bonus. So check it all out online, playbooksports.com.
Mark, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, Greg, enjoy the games, be well, and I'll catch up with you next week. Take care.